Warning: the following video may be classified by self-proclaimed, allegedly unbiased, independent fact-checkers. Proceed at your discretion.
We want you naked, you gotta stand naked. Because why? Because we say so. And if you don't do it, you will end up in a metal box, like I was, in a metal box for no reason whatsoever. And then they took me to a smaller metal box because they could. And there was really nothing I could do about it. When I challenged them and I said, I guess you've learned from the best, from your buddies, the Nazis, how to treat other human beings, or the guard was offended.
Welcome back, guys. This is part two, the continuation of my interview with Artur Pawlowski. There's still quite a bit left to go, so let's get right into it. I think people in the West have really never lived through anything like this before. They have this idea that what happened in Nazi Germany, for example, just happened overnight. They just started throwing people into concentration camps, and it wasn't like that, right? They don't understand this was a long process. It took time, it took social conditioning, it took moving people mentally into this, to accept this, to achieve that. And people just can't seem to put those parallels together. That's exactly what's happening here. Just like you said, they take people, they call them they're crazy, and they're not following science, and putting you into a psych ward. People who they can't go to an ice rink to play hockey, or go to a restaurant if they don't have a vaccine passport, or things like that. Like there's a lot of commonality there, and people need to kind of connect the dots on that with what happened with you. Now you were, I think it was 51 days, right, that you were put in jail, and through all these various punishments that they put you through. So you're saying that actually the people that were around you actually started to sort of take to you. So it's kind of had a reverse effect that they wanted it to have. They put you in this situation. They were hoping these guys were all going to kind of turn on you and make things very uncomfortable for you, and rather they actually put you in a place where you can spread more of your light and your truth to people and actually have a positive influence on them.
And I think they absolutely hated that because, of course, I'm new in this criminal lifestyle, right?
Sure.
I'm learning as I go. I have never been in prison. I actually ministered in prison as a chaplain. So my experience from behind the bars was always, I was there to give them hope and hang around for a few hours. And then I went back to my life. So this was the first time that I was imprisoned. I have been arrested 15 times before that, but always only few days, 24 hours to 3 days and 2 nights max, I would spend at the police jail, mostly Spy Hill detention. And that was a form of punishment on concrete, bright lights, you can't sleep, and that they had their punishment. This was the first time that I was actually taken to prison, and I was able to observe what's happening behind the bars. And here is what I observed. And I think they made a big mistake of allowing me to go there and to see firsthand what's really going on, the abuse of power. For example, when they strip us naked, the whole unit, for no reason whatsoever, and we complained that we have our rights, the guards were laughing at us and they said, here you have no rights. It's what we say. I mean, seriously, you're on some kind of a power trip, you psychopath, because you're acting like a psychopath. Being in prison, the guards and the administration should not add punishment to the inmates. This is punishment. But however, the problem is that the guards are adding their own punishment on the people because they're psychopaths, many of them, not all of them. I've met some really good guards, and I would be a liar if I would say all of them are, but no, actually there is a big number of good guards, real humans, not Robocops, not Gestapo, not Nazis, but actual human beings that are just doing their job, and they're doing it good. Well, they're not abusing their power. And I've met a number of them, and I was very grateful that God still has humans working in the institution. However, there are also psychopaths over there. They love the power that they have over another human being, and they do not hesitate to use it. For example, when you are there, they can take you to a strip search for whatever crazy reason they think of. And there's absolutely no reason for the strip search for you being undressed, naked in front of other people, which I was in front of women and men alike. That's crazy stuff. And there is no reason for that. I'll tell you why. Because of course they will say, well, we are looking for contraband, right? Well, here is the lie. In the facility, there is a body scanner like you have at the airport. And I have been taken there multiple times. And the body scanner, it shows you everything you have inside your body and outside. There is no need to strip people naked. They do this to dehumanize you, to humiliate you, to show you you're lesser than a dog. We want you naked. You got to stand naked. Because why? Because we say so. And if you don't do it, you will end up in a metal box, like I was, in a metal box for no reason whatsoever. And then they took me to a smaller metal box because they could. And there was really nothing I could do about it. When I challenged them and I said, I guess you've learned from the best, from your buddies, the Nazis, how to treat other human beings. Or the guard was offended. He was actually offended.
Wow, imagine that.
I don't appreciate being called a Nazi. And I said, then stop acting like a Nazi. What am I doing?
Good for you.
Nazis done stuff like this. There is no reason. I'm not a violent offender. I've done nothing wrong. I'm not resisting. I'm not fighting. Why am I in a metal box sitting like this? I can't stretch, nothing. I'm suffocating because it's extremely cold, hot. They would not give me anything to drink. And I was passing out. What am I doing in a doghouse? And now you're offended because I called you a Nazi. Stop acting like Nazis. Stop acting like KGB, Gestapo. I will stop calling you names. Be officer of the law. There is a law in place. But however, we know that the law is out the window. Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it's out the window. And the protection of the criminal code is out the window as well. So those people feel they can do whatever the crazy thing they can think of. So zero accountability. They can do whatever they want. And I think they made a big mistake because what I saw inside is absolutely crazy. So for example, not only I was kept over 30 days in isolation, in solitary confinement, which is a form of torture. When I was coming out, every inmate was commanded to go to their room. So I was just by myself. What they were doing, they were trying to break me because the crown prosecutor that placed so many charges on me gave me an offer when I was at my lowest, when I was being tortured by the administration. And here was the offer: plead to one little charge and all the other charges will disappear and you can go home. You see, that's the game they're playing. They're messing with your mind. They're torturing you so you can plead guilty to one thing. Why? So they can have their story. So they can have front page newspapers saying Pastor Artur Pawlowski he pleaded guilty. He admits he's a criminal. And we told you so from the very beginning. And that would be their story. That would be their story. That's what they wanted to achieve. Me saying I am a criminal.
Sounds like they're very threatened by you, and they took this opportunity. Really, like you say, they were trying to mentally break you, and putting you through all these punishments. I understand that you were not allowed to have your Bible for some period of time as well when you were in there. Well, what was that like when you were in that solitary confinement? That must have been just like you say, torture. What was going through your mind as you were going through that? How did you kind of push through that?
It is a torture, and I'm testifying, and I'm willing to testify before any court, being locked in a very small space, alone, nothing to do, and just like you said, they would not give me anything to read, no Bible, for a number of days. Finally, I got one, and they took it again. So they were messing with my brain. And then finally, they gave me a Bible, but they would not give me my glasses. So I had the Bible, but I could not read it. I could not read anything because they would not give me my glasses. So what is happening when you're locked and there's nothing to do? You can't watch Netflix, you can't read, you can't do much. And even when I received the glasses, finally after a week, you read for an hour, 2, 3, 4, 5, but you get bored, you get depressed, you get like you just want to scream and yell for the people to get you out so you can have interactions with other human beings, because you go nuts. Here, when I was there, I witnessed people going crazy, literally. I saw people having a mental breakdown. I saw people yelling and screaming and crying, banging on the door every day and yelling, let me out. Why am I locked for 23, 24 hours a day? Why? I remember this one fella, he would stare in one point on the wall. Every time I would come out, I would look through the window, and he would just sit there and just stare at one point. And then I saw him having complete mental breakdown, with crying and yelling and screaming and begging. And I've seen that actually multiple times throughout my ordeal over there. Here's a very interesting part, that I work with the drug dealers and drug addicts for 23 years. And I always thought that the biggest drug traffickers are the pushers on the streets. However, every single day in remand centers, there is a nurse and a guard. Sometimes 3 times a day, they would come and they would ask you if you need drugs. Fentanyl, cocaine, you name it. 5 different drugs can be supplied to you free of charge, so you can be stoned. And I was puzzled at first because I didn't know. Again, I'm new in this criminal lifestyle, so I'm learning as I go. And I didn't know why during the day. So you go nuts, you go crazy, there's nothing to do. And then I would watch through the doors other inmates sleeping during the day. And I would be puzzled, telling you the truth, because if you got nothing to do, the last thing you want is sleep, because you're not tired, right? And during the night you sleep, but during the day you just walk around back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It was 7 feet by 11 feet cell, and so it is nothing to do, and the last thing you want is sleep. So I was wondering why they're sleeping. This is weird. I would like to have that ability to just sleep throughout of this horror movie.
Sure.
But I couldn't, because the time runs over there totally differently than here. Here on the outside, my biggest enemy is time. I'm catching up. I'm trying always to catch another task, another thing that I have to do. Over there, your biggest enemy is also time, but from a different perspective. It just drags. It goes forever. A day after day looks identical, and it drives you nuts. So here is what I learned. I learned that those inmates were receiving fentanyl and cocaine and other forms of heavy drugs so they can sleep all day. And that's exactly what was going on every day. First, I didn't know. The nurse was coming and says, do I need anything? I said, I just get me out of the cell. I don't understand, why am I locked in solitary confinement? I remember that this is a form of torture. Why am I being tortured here? But she said, well, there's nothing I can do about that. Do you need anything else? And later on, I talked to the inmates and I find out that that's the thing. The biggest drug pushers are the nurses and the guards. And the drugs are not coming from outside. The drugs are being supplied by you and me, by taxpayers. It's like, right. Wow. I've seen drugs being dealt there. Inmates would sell them back and forth for different other items. So it's a big, it's a big business.
Yeah, it sounds like the perfect business model. If you are a drug dealer, you get people into jail, you emotionally break them, make them so that they can't handle it anymore, and then you offer these drugs as a way for them to escape the torture that they're that they're dealing with, then they become addicts. So they're
That's
actually making the problem much worse.
that's
Uh,
exactly what's happening, because there's nothing being done with those boys in prison. There is no effort to change your ways. There is no social workers coming. There is no chapel allowed. There's nothing. A chaplain, I feel, just to find out how the system works, I filled a request to see a chaplain, and I waited a month and a half. So to see a
wow.
chaplain, there's nothing. There is no chess, no checkers. At least in Calgary unit that there was, I asked for different games. I wanted to play some stuff. When finally they let me out of the solitary confinement after 30 some days, and I was able to spend some time with the inmates, there's nothing to do. There is nothing being provided. So what they want is, they want recruits. By giving them drugs, they're making sure that they're going to come back to the system. And
Mhm.
this is like a revolving door of never ending clients for drugs, and also clients to come back to the correctional center that corrects absolutely nothing, makes prisoners, because they're being paid just like for the homeless, per head, more cattle, more money.
It's disgusting. And it's a lot like what we're seeing with the pharmaceutical industry right now with this whole vaccine push. Feels like the same sort of idea. This is all to just make people addicted to vaccines, and as a way to solve their irrational fear for this virus that is very survivable, very manageable. So now, as I understand, you're on house arrest. Is that still true?
Yeah, I was 2 weeks, 24 hours a day. Now I have 12 hours a day from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I'm not allowed to go to different places, and I'm heavily restricted. So I have half, 12 hours a day. I am on total house arrest, and it's absolutely unbelievable. I cannot travel. I cannot do stuff like normal people. And remember, I have not been found guilty. I'm an
Correct.
innocent man. And the notion that you're innocent until proven guilty, it's out the window.
And do you have a trial date set even yet?
No trial date yet. It could be a year from now. It could be 2 years from now. I already spent my time for my crime, if you will, and we still do
Oh,
not
more than
have.
that. More
We
than that. You've been 51 days in jail. Now you're on house arrest, which is, you know, it's, I guess, a little more comfortable, but it's still, this is not what a free person's life looks like. And you have not even got a trial date set, and you've not been found guilty of anything. So as far as I can see, it sounds like you've been overly punished for something that you have not even been found guilty for yet.
Yes, and then you've got an interesting twist in the story, that I have been arrested and I'm facing all those criminal charges for an offense that our Premier Jason Kenney was caught red-handed doing with his cabinet minister of environment, Jason Nixon, and the minister of finance, Tibbs, and the minister, believe it or not, of health, Taylor Shandro, which was a good Nazi for the Kenny's government, because he was sending the KGB psychopaths to shut down restaurants and churches. And he, for his crimes against humanity, he has been greatly rewarded with another ministerial. The very man that muzzled the entire population and destroyed and murdered so many people by his mandates and restrictions received a ministerial of being a solicitor general and a minister of justice for the province of Alberta. He is the one responsible for suing me, for proceeding with this criminal charges right now. The very man that I exposed, the very man that was caught red-handed in a Sky Palace hypocrisy, having a party, a whiskey party with his boss, Jason Kenney, and other fellas that broke the same rules and regulations and mandates that I was arrested under. He is the minister of justice that is proceeding with this mockery of justice.
Yeah, and then so total double standard. They make the rules. They don't even have the ability or the integrity to even follow their own rules. They clearly don't believe anything. And then when someone else doesn't follow their rules, it's the hammer comes down, but not they don't have any consequences whatsoever to their actions. It's brutal.
That's
Um,
exactly that's and now you've got your answer. If comes why I call them Nazis, why I call them communists, because
yeah,
during the Nazi era, the the Nazis could do whatever they wanted, and there was no consequences to their actions. They could shoot you in a street without trial, and there was nothing you could do. The communists were doing the same thing. I remember the famous saying when I was growing up by the police, the KGB, the communist police. They would say, "Give us a man, and we'll always find something against that man." In other words, we will cook something up. Don't worry, just give us a man, and if we want to hurt this person, we'll find something. We'll make something up.
yeah, it's unbelievable, and unfortunately, I think that this is going to continue on for a little while. But I wanted to ask you, the lockdowns, they were basically a weapon that crushed and suffocated people across the country. Every other public health measure that they added did more harm than good, from masks to social distancing, the vaccination requirements. So many people lost their jobs, they lost their businesses. How did it affect your community and your congregation in particular? Are there any stories that stand out to you, kind of thinking back on that, people maybe talking to you about their personal situations with that?
Well, here is the statistics, right? We are being told to follow the science, to follow data, statistics. Well, why do? First of all, in 2020, because we have the stats right now, we had the lowest admission since 2015, if I remember correctly. And we also had the lowest admission to emergency, to the how you call the so you've got the admission to the courts, to the hospitals, and you've got the places ICUs. So that was the lowest for a number of years. Also, we are being told that people have died, and I don't doubt that some people did die. Every single year, people do die because of the flu, and that's very unfortunate. Every life is a beautiful gift, and it's sad when that life ends for whatever reason. However, if you look at the data, the amounts of people that have died during the past 2 years, it's identical to the previous years, because we have more citizens in the province of Alberta. Therefore, about 100 to 200 people every year more people will die, because there's more people in the province, more immigrants coming, and more people moving, and more people being born. And that's exactly what was during 2020 and 2021. Also, if you look at the statistics, more people have died because of suicide.
Yes.
Than all of the COVID so-called deaths in the country. Also, more people died because of abuse of drugs or alcohol than all of the flu deaths combined together. So here's what I'm hearing from the people left and right, that the lockdowns have caused a harm to not just their finances, but also to their mental and physical well-being. Some people cannot cope with this. They've lost everything, and the guns were so big that there was nothing they could do, so they committed suicide. Some people are depressed and turn into drugs to cope with horrible circumstances they're being faced. Instead, the government, instead of saving people, instead of helping citizens that are paying them for that very job, has turned against the citizens and is destroying and murdering them left and right. So people are depressed, people are suicidal, people are turning into drugs and alcohol just to survive another day.
So yeah, well, the liquor stores, the dispensaries, these were all considered essential services, right? And people would
use that as a way to kind of help them cope with this. Meanwhile, you have church that was being shut down. And this is obviously another way that people cope with this sort of thing, a much healthier way, I would argue. And this was not allowed. So it really shows you the way that this whole government overreached their mentality toward health and people's well-being. It makes no sense.
Because it doesn't make sense if you don't know what the whole thing is all about. But if you actually know what they are doing, it makes perfect sense. Because, for example, when you come to church, you get hope, and they don't want people to have hope, because when you have hope, you have tendency to oppose evil. You have tendency to stand up for your rights and say, hey, this is wrong, and I'm going to fight you to oppose this great evil. Also, they don't want people to come together, because when you come together, you're stronger, you're more powerful. Yes. You work with each other, you support each other, and you can oppose the totalitarian regime. So, for example, I could take my entire church, half of the neighborhood, and I could go to IKEA, and that was perfectly acceptable and lawful. And yet I could not have my brother for a coffee at my house. I could take my brother to IKEA, to Costco, to Walmart, to Safeway, and have a coffee right there. And that was perfectly okay. And that was science. But if he would come to my house, well, the whole neighborhood would be jeopardized. And I was a bloody murderer compared to Adolf Hitler or Stalin. That's the logic, because you got to know what they're playing. They are isolating people. When you isolate, how do predators hunt? Predators isolate weaker people, or they isolate someone from the herd, because it becomes an easier target. So what they were doing to us for the past 2 years, they were isolating us, that we would be more vulnerable, weaker. When you're weaker, then you're easier target. And that's exactly what we are to them. We are being targeted by those villains. They are turncoats, they are traitors, they should be charged for treason. Those politicians should be charged for treason. Doctors and nurses that implemented this should be charged for murder, because that's exactly what they were part of, murdering human beings for the past 2 years. So anyway, unessential services, they've decided the churches are unacceptable because historically speaking, Christians always opposed tyranny, always opposed what's evil, historically speaking. Yes. Except few moments where they were brainwashed as well. And that's a big threat to the totalitarian regime, because a good man will refuse to do evil act. If you're truly a real Christian, you would even love your enemies. So you will not hurt another human being. You're not going to murder a child. You're not going to murder an elderly. If you're a doctor and a Christian, or a nurse and a Christian, you're going to do everything in your power to save their lives, because it comes from the core of your belief. And they didn't want that. They don't want good people doing good deeds, because they have a plan, Agenda 30 and 2030, and they have a agenda that you will own nothing and you will be happy. They want everyone to just be poor and miserable and easy controlled, because they truly believe they're the pharaohs and the rest of the people are the slaves. And if by now people do not realize what's really going on, then I don't know what to say. Perhaps they're too stupid or blind or completely brainwashed to realize that this has nothing to do with keeping us safe. Right. This has nothing to do to save our loved ones. This has everything to do with a greatest takeover in a history of Earth. It's a totalitarian takeover, depriving people from their God and state given rights. Is like a death by the 1,000 cuts. And that's exactly what Hitler did. He didn't just implemented one big law. He did little laws, and many of them during a dozen years that he was preparing himself to murder so many, tens of millions of people.
All right, guys, we're gonna pause that there. Follow me into the next video, part 3, where we're gonna conclude this interview with Artur Pawlowski. Just an incredible interview. I'm so pleased to have had the opportunity to do that. Follow me into the next part. There's more. You're not going to want to miss it, so I'll see you there. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that and want to see more, hit the like button and feel free to leave a comment and tell me what you think. This content can be found on BitChute, Gab, Brighteon, Telegram, Rumble, Parler, Odyssey, and the Highwire. So please follow, subscribe, and turn post notifications on so you can know when the next post drops. Thanks, and see you soon.